I have a mentor who is afraid of knives, especially when I hold them. She is the greatest youth pastor that I ever knew. She's still alive, I should say that. She's the greatest youth pastor I've ever known, and she's taught me a lot. But she would always get really nervous around knives, especially if somebody was holding them, and if you would kind of wave them around like that a little bit at their point. And I would go to their house all the time, her and her husband's house, and I was always eating all the food out of their pantry because I was like 19 or 20 years old, and that's just what I did. And I remember like cutting something one time, and I'm holding this knife, and I finally said, "What's wrong with you? Why are you always getting all weird?" Because she would get kind of, when somebody gets their back up against the wall a little bit, she'd be like that. I was like, "Well, I'm not going to do anything." I'm like, what are you doing? She was this incredible youth pastor because she'd overcome a lot in life. When she was a preacher's daughter. Her dad had been this pastor. He was still the pastor of this bustling, growing mega church in this town we were in, and she was the quintessential preacher's daughter, involved in the praise team and did all the youth group stuff and all these things, and everything was really hunky-dory and all of that. And then next thing you know, we find out that she's not doing so great, that she's kind of running from God, and she is pregnant, and she's not married to the man that she is having a baby with. And while that has maybe become a little bit less scandalous today in 2025, 30 years ago, it was a little bit scandalous still, especially for the daughter of a pastor who is in a bustling megachurch. Nobody could really understand what was going on. Everybody had their judgments. Everybody had their thoughts. Everybody was wondering, what's going on? Why did this happen? What's wrong with you? And so fast forward some years when I'm standing in their kitchen and I'm holding a knife and she's got her back up against the wall a little bit. I said, "What's wrong with you?" See, I knew her, but I didn't know her story. And part of her story was that she had been abused by a family friend when she was in her later teenage years, by somebody who was in part of their church, part of her dad's circle, and that there had been a knife involved in that abuse. I didn't know that story. And what I found out later was that that caused her to run from God and say, I'm done with this. I don't want to do anything with church anymore. I don't need any part of that anymore. Maybe you've experienced church hurt in your life and you've said, I'm done with that. Maybe you're still kind of on the verge right now and you just kind of wandered in here. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being brave today. She was there. She didn't know. She was kind of floating through life, and she met this guy who loved her a lot, but she was just messing him over all the time, and because she was just a nutcase by her own admission. Those are her words. And then there's a baby involved. Well, it all worked out for good because she actually did love this guy, and they got married and they had 2 more kids, and things were wonderful and good. But she still had this as part of her story. And she overcame all of that trauma, and she became a youth pastor and led, I'm not kidding, hundreds of kids to Jesus. She was a mentor for maybe 100 or more leaders like myself later too. See, I thought I knew her, but I didn't know her story. You know what I mean? A lot of times we pass judgments on people and we decide who they are based on an interaction with them or who we think they should be. And we don't know their story. We don't know why they react the way that they react. We don't know why they might do this or might do that. And we just know that they interacted with us outside of their house next to our house one day in a way that we didn't like. And now suddenly they're crazy or mean or not to be trusted or one of those things. Today we're kicking off a new series called Let Me Tell You a Story. We'll be in it all the way up till Easter. And it's about the stories that Jesus told so that he could really tell the greatest story ever told, and that's the story of Jesus. We're talking about stories, you get it? A lot about stories. I don't know if you caught it. Let me tell you a story, because stories matter so much. Stories can help us learn more than we ever would have learned otherwise. We learn about people better from stories often than we do from just somebody telling us something about them, or just one interaction, two interactions we have with them, maybe even a whole host of interactions, we learn a lot better about them when we know their story. Stories tell us a lot about other people too. Have you ever been with somebody who they only ever told stories about themselves? Like you start telling a story about what's going on in your life, or somebody's asked you to tell what's going on in your life, and you do that, and then the next thing they're doing is they're bringing the conversation back to them and telling a story about them in third grade with Mrs. Barrett or somebody like that. Or maybe you've got that person who only tells stories about their life from long ago, like 40, 50 years ago. They never tell the stories from the last 10 years. They're telling stories from 40 or 50 years ago, back when they were in their heyday or whatever it was. And they never linger too long on these stories in the present. Or maybe you know that person who only tells stories about other people. They can't let themselves tell stories about them, because then that opens them up for critique. We learn a lot about people from stories in all sorts of ways. So as we begin this morning, let me tell you a story. One day, Jesus and his followers made their way back to Capernaum, which is their home base. This is where they kind of operated everything out of. And when they got there, these guys showed up. They were the temple tax collectors. You've heard of the IRS, but these guys are way more intense than that. They've got God behind them. So now you can be mad at the IRS, but it's kind of hard to be mad at the temple tax guys. They show up and they say, hey, Peter, is your guy Jesus, does he pay the temple tax? Is he going to pay the temple tax? The temple tax was 2 drachmas, or a half shekel. And every free Jewish man was expected to pay this temple tax annually. Now, some people didn't agree with this. There were some groups that said, no, you only have to do that once. Others said it has to be voluntary. You can't mandate it. But for the most part, every free Jewish male at that time in Jesus' era would pay this tax. I love Jesus' response, because Peter is talking to these guys, and he has to go into the house to ask Jesus, hey, are you going to pay the tax? I told him you would. And before he even gets a word out, Jesus says, hey, Peter, who pays the taxes? Is it the sons and the daughters of the kings, or is it everybody else? And Peter responds, well, it's everybody else. The sons and the daughters of the kings don't have to pay the taxes. It's everybody else. And Jesus' response is incredible to me. He says, then the children are exempt. We're talking about a temple tax, a tax that's attached to God. And here Jesus, the Son of God, who has been talking to his disciples as children of God, he says, then the children are exempt. So he goes on and he says, well, in order that we might not cause offense and raise a ruckus, in order that we don't do some terrible stuff here and really cause a problem, I'm going to help you get the money. Go out there and throw a line in the water, and when you reel the fish back in, there's going to be a 4 shekel piece, and you pay my temple tax and yours. Now let's just pause there for a moment. If that's how fishing went, I'd go fishing all the time. Like, not only are you fishing, you're bringing in money. That's pretty great. That's pretty awesome. And it's just a casual thing for Jesus. He's like, yeah, just go out there and get a fish out of the lake. No big deal. And so that's what Peter does. He goes and he pays the temple tax, and it's allegedly gone. But I need you to remember that Jesus is referring to his people here as these children of God, and that he's saying you're kind of exempt. This is a foreshadowing of what's to come next, because it's not long after this that the disciples are all sitting around with Jesus. He's their teacher, he's their rabbi, and he says, and they look at him and they say, hey, Jesus, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? They're obsessed with this question, by the way. Not the only ones. There's a lot of us who are obsessed with who's the greatest. How do you know? Is it LeBron? Is it Michael Jordan? It's obviously Michael Jordan. Who's the greatest of all time at whatever the thing is? And they say, who's the greatest? Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus looks at them, and he looks around, and there's this little kid playing, and he says, hey, come here. Come here. Jedediah, or whatever his name is. He sits the kid there, and then he said this. Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children. you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Not only are you not the greatest, but you don't even get to enter the kingdom of heaven until you become like a little child. You have to change, boys. There's like you're great guys and everything, but until you figure out that you have to change and become like little children, you won't even enter the kingdom of heaven. They want to know who the greatest is? Dude, you don't even know if you're in yet. And how do you get in? You got to be like a little child. Interesting. We were just talking about God's children, weren't we? We were just talking about God's children. We're going to trace this thread all the way through here for the next few verses. He says, you have to change and become like little children. That's significant because in those days, little children had no rights. They had no voice of their own. They didn't get to have a standing in court. They were often abused and hurt mercilessly. Nobody cared. If there was a job that nobody else in the house wanted to do, guess who got to do it? The youngest. What? You remember when Jesus washed his feet toward the end of his life? If there wasn't a slave in the house, the youngest child got to do that for everybody. He's saying, unless you become a person who takes the lowest place among everybody else around you, you won't even enter into the conversation about the kingdom of heaven. That's quite different than what everybody else around was saying. You have to take the low place. Well, Jesus kept talking and talking about how the kingdom of heaven was this and the kingdom of heaven was that. But then he picks back up in this thread of little children and says this. He says, if anyone causes one of these little ones, children, babies, 5-year-old, 8-year-old, these little ones, those who believe in me. When he's talking about little ones and little children, here he is explicitly saying those who believe in me. He's explaining the metaphor. Those who believe in me to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. That seems serious. That seems serious. Now, as a dad, I can tell you that if I'm out with my children and I look over and they're running around having a good time and all of a sudden you're there and you just kind of push one of them over and make them stumble or you trip them or something, I might laugh for a moment, depending on how mad they've made me that day. But I'm really going to be mad, aren't I? I'm going to be annoyed with that. I'm going to come over. I'm going to be furious. I'm going to say, what are you doing? What are we doing here? How dare you? I'm going to be all up in your face. Why? Because that's my child. You caused them to stumble. You tried to hurt them. Causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me. These are people who already believe. He says, you cause one of them to stumble, there are going to be severe consequences. Why? Well, the implication is that God cares, Jesus cares very much, that those who believe in him have immeasurable worth. In the same way that my children have immeasurable worth to me in my life, and if you hurt them, I'm coming after you. The same thing. You have immeasurable worth to God, and so do those around you. Well, Jesus keeps talking. He's still got a little bit more to say. He's still got a little bit more to say about these little ones. He says this, see that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. Now despise, don't disdain. Don't just think that they're less than. Don't treat them as if they aren't valuable. Understand how valuable they are. These little ones, these ones who believe in me. He's not just talking about children here. He's talking about those who believe in him. It could include and encompass children. He's talking about those who believe in him. He said, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. That might sound a little weird, like we all got guardian angels or something. Jesus is speaking the language of the day. The Jews of that day in Jesus' era largely believed that each person had their own angel, sort of a guardian angel situation. And they believed that only certain angels got to see the face of the Father. And only the most important angels were those angels. So Jesus says, these little ones, the ones who take the low place, the ones who believe in me, those are the ones with the angels that go before the Father. What Jesus is saying then is that those who believe in him are so, so, so important to God. They are of immeasurable worth. Do you believe that about yourself? That God actually cares about you? Maybe you're tempted sometimes to think, I've been left out here on my own. Maybe you've done something that you think justifies you being left out there on your own too, right? That you think, I have stepped away from God on purpose and with purpose because I want to be away from this. And I'm on my own and I'm going to figure this out at some point and then I'll come back to God after I've figured it all out. I certainly am not going to hang out with God's people when I'm doing all of this. I'm going to figure this all out. And maybe I'll act right at some point again. Maybe I'll act like a Christian, but I believe in God and maybe I'll follow Jesus again. But in the meantime, I'm here. Jesus, in trying to explain this immeasurable worth, tells a story. He says, what do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep, let's pause there for a second. 100 sheep. That doesn't make somebody super rich in the ancient world, but it's definitely, this person's not poor. But they would have been looked at with great suspicion by everybody else because being a shepherd was a blacklisted trade. Being a shepherd was not something to be celebrated in those days. We talk about a good shepherd and we think there's a great connotation with it, but in Jesus' day, anybody hearing this story would have gone, ugh, I don't know about that one. A shepherd? Blacklisted trade? You can probably think of a trade today, a job today that somebody might have that everybody around would go, that's not a good one for a Christian to have. That's not a good one for anyone to have. When Jesus tells a story highlighting that person, if a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that wandered off? This is the story of the wandering sheep. This doesn't make any sense financially. If you think about it from a financial standpoint, if I were to give you $100 and just gave it to you all, say, in ones, I give you $100 and you're just walking around and suddenly you get to where you're going, you get home and you count your money and go, oh, there's only 99 here. Are you really going to go back and trace your steps for $1? No. No. Only the cheapest among us might do this. You're going to leave that dollar out there. It's like, somebody else can have it. Let's up the ante a little bit. If I give you $1,000, if I give you $1,000 and maybe you lost 10, so you only had $990, are you going to go looking for that $10? No. You still got 990. Jesus is saying this sheep is so valuable financially to this shepherd that the shepherd has to go after it. He wants to go after. That shepherd could leave that sheep out there. He's got to take care of these 99. Like, would you rather lose 1 or 99? Would you rather lose 1 or maybe like another 20 when some kind of other evil thing comes along and eats him up? Who knows? Who knows what could happen while you're off searching for this other guy over here? Who knows? But Jesus says the shepherd is going to go off. The shepherd is going to go off and look for this sheep. Now, remember, in this context, we're not talking about the unconverted, the ones who don't believe in Jesus and who've never followed. We're talking about, in this context, those who already believe in Jesus and who have now wandered away. This is where we sometimes get lost. This is sometimes where we lose it here. We're talking about people who already believe. We're talking about people who have literally wandered away. And what I know to be true is that most of the Christians I've ever known have gone through a period of their life where they have done exactly that. They've wandered and they've gone through periods where they said, I'm just going to do what I want to do. You know the thing about sheep when they wander off? After a while, they look around and they realize they're by themselves and they're lost. They don't know where to go. And they just sit down. They quit moving, quit going anywhere. They just sit down. Almost as if they're kind of resigning themselves to the idea and to the notion that they're going to die. because they're almost defenseless out there. Nobody can help them unless somebody shows up. And so they just sit down. And I think that happens to a lot of us sometimes when we wander off from God and we start doing whatever we want to do, and we kind of shrug our shoulders and say, I'm just going to do this and hope God forgives me. We just give up. I don't know if you've ever been there, or maybe you're there right now. I want to encourage you. You got to listen to the rest of this story. But understand this, God is coming after you. Like through my words this morning, through the words we've been singing, through the music that's been playing, through the stuff you heard on the car, through the people you've talked to today, God is still coming after you. God isn't done with you. You may feel like you can sit down in this one spot and just be done, but God is still coming after you. God isn't done. In fact, God celebrates you. Look at this. If he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. What do you mean he's happier about that? These 99, they did everything right. They did what they were supposed to do. That one, he's a dummy. He wandered off. It's because the sheep has immeasurable worth to God. And you have immeasurable worth to God. You. And you might say, of course I do. I'm awesome. And so does that person that you don't like. They too have immeasurable worth to God. So that person who just gets under your skin, that one that maybe you can't even explain it why they get under your skin. There's just something about them, the way they look, the way they laugh, the way they smell, who knows? They have immeasurable worth to God. Now, you know that. If you've been in church any length of time, you've heard that platitude over and over again. But it's true. Even though we're prone to wander off and to leave God, you still have so much immeasurable worth to God that God is saying, I want you, I want you, I want you. And he's coming after us. He's not giving up. And that's why Jesus can say it this way at the end. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish. There it is again, isn't it? Little ones. God wants each and every one. Why? Because they're of immeasurable worth. Jesus is cautioning us here to understand we have to take the same posture and the same approach to these ones who wander off from God as God does. We have to take God's same posture and same approach. Because what I know to be true is that while a lot of us tend to have moments in our life where we wander off from God and kind of sit down and just hope something good happens until God finds us, there's also some of us who have stayed with the 99, and we take some kind of weird pleasure in seeing those people wander off. We feel good about us when we see them wander off, and we stuck with the pack. We stayed with God where God wanted us. We followed the shepherd while they walked off just believing in the shepherd. But our posture should be one that wants to bring those people back. And we're not being judgmental. We're just going to celebrate when they're finally back in the fold. We can't give up on people. Remember, when he's talking about the little ones who wander and go astray, we're not talking necessarily just about the unconverted. We're talking about those who already believe. I watch this with my daughters sometimes. My daughters are 3, 5, and 8. And the older they get, the more the sibling rivalry comes out. I remember hearing my mom and dad talk about this with my younger brother and I. And I remember being a kid and even a teenager and just being so annoyed with my little brother. Now he's one of my best friends. But as a kid, like he was just super annoying. All the older siblings understand what I'm talking about, of course. And I remember being so annoyed. And now I watch it with my daughters. My 8-year-old, she's quick to be like, oh, come on, Sloan. And the 5-year-old doesn't get it as much. She doesn't understand the sibling rivalry as much. She's like wanting to help her sister and loves her sister, and her sister's kind of her hero, but she's also not going to put up with that. And she doesn't want to be made to look bad. My 3-year-old there's no sibling rivalry whatsoever. She just loves her sister. She just thinks they're the greatest things ever. And she wants to do all the same stuff that they do. It's funny to watch their age, watch how it changes across their ages, the sibling rivalry. The older they get, the more they're trying to differentiate themselves from each other. The older they get, the more they're trying to look good, maybe even at the expense of their sisters looking bad. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? It sounds so familiar. How often do we think good things about ourselves because we can think bad things about somebody else? And we don't even know their story. We don't know why they act that way. Friends, our posture to those who maybe have wandered off, or maybe those who are acting like they believe in God but not really following Jesus, right? Our posture towards them should be one of, hey, come back. Hey, come back into the fold. It should never be one of, you're too far gone. I don't want anything to do with you. There's appropriate boundaries out there, of course. We've got to set some of those sometimes. But for the most part, even in our boundary making, we can be praying for these people at the very least. And that's a good place to start. Why? Because that's who God is. That's who God is. And if you don't hear anything else I say today, I want you to hear this. God chases those who wander. God chases those who wander. You and I might leave them off to go do whatever they want. We may be done with the headache, but God chases those who wander. When I was like about 10 years old, I used to go to my grandparents' house every day during the summer, and I'd play basketball. And the hoop was like 3 doors down, and it was one of those that was like literally on the street and it had been put in, and I would just sit there and I would shoot all day. And this is 100 degrees in Texas in the summer, so I'm just shooting all day, and I'm just hydrating myself with Dr. Pepper and Big Red all day. It was beautiful. And one day this kid walks down. I'd never seen him before, and he comes around, and he's a few years older than me. And so we're playing, and we're playing all day. And finally he says, hey, let's go to my house. I got a hoop at my house. I said, fine, let's do it. Let's go. And like any good 10-year-old boy, I just do that without telling my grandparents. It's around the corner where this kid's house is. And we go into his backyard, and we're shooting there. And I noticed that it's starting to get a little bit darker. I can't really see the street lights, but I can notice it's starting to get darker. And so we're still playing and playing and playing. And suddenly I realize I need to go home. So I say, hey, man, I got to go. He says, no, man, come on. One more game. We keep doing one more game. And about 17 games later, I realize it's dark. Uh-oh. And this guy's also being rude the whole time, but I'm trying to make a friend. And I finally like, that's it. I'm leaving. And so I just like take the ball and I leave. And as I walk outside, I see it's dark, and I'm heading home. And there I see my grandpa knocking on doors, asking people if they see me. This is before cell phones, right? Asking if they see me. And then he catches my eye as we're walking, and I know I'm in trouble. But even as mad as he was in that moment, he had every right to be angry with me. He was overjoyed that he found me. He had every right to yell and scream at me and tell me how dumb of a grandson I was and how dangerous that was. But I knew in that moment, more than all of that, he loved me and he just wanted good things for me. He was scared for me. If you've been wandering from God, if you've wandered off, that's how God feels about you. If you have somebody significant in your life, or maybe not that significant in your life, that you know has wandered off from God, that's how God feels about them. He loves them, and he wants them, and he's scared for them. And he wants to bring them back in the fold, and that's how you and I should approach them too. What a great story. Let's pray together. God, thank you for today, and thank you that you never left us. That even when others might have left us, you never left us. You never forsaken us. This morning I ask that you would touch our hearts wherever we're at on this journey. And the Holy Spirit, you just do your work in our life. In those places that need encouragement, in those places that need conviction, that you would give what's needed. Help us to recognize that you have good things for us, better than anything we can imagine. That we have this abundant and full life we can be living, free of guilt, free of shame, free of death and destruction. Help us, God, to say yes when you find us. Help us to be thankful for this love you lavish on us, this grace you give us that we don't deserve. And help us to extend that same grace to those around us who may have walked away from you. Help us to clear our minds and our hearts and our mouths of judgment and just bring grace.